He's always got the time.
Is that because of his... I can't say that. He's got a watch. Have the size of his watch.
Into his watch. It's a great watch, but he's always got the time.
There is no such thing as a quiet week for an AFL journalist, and this episode will demonstrate just that. To delve into the happenings of the Melbourne Football Club and to provide an insight into his role as the Devil, I introduce Tom Morris. Fresh off Channel 9 News and straight onto the watch, it's a massive honour to have you on, Tommy. You're a busy man. Thanks for coming down.
Benny, thanks for having me. I'm a bit overdressed, I think. Wearing a suit. I've still got my makeup on from Channel 9 tonight, but it's good to be here. And I just noticed, I know you call it the watch. You're well known for your watches. You wear it on your right hand, not your right wrist, not your left wrist. Why is that?
That was because when I was younger, I wanted to be Brad Green, who was the left footer.
Oh, yeah?
And I was under the impression that lefties would have to wear their watch on their right hand. And then I had Brad Green on the podcast, and it turns out he wears his watch on his left hand. So
really?
My whole life's a lie. But
serious watch.
Yeah, that's how it sort of came about.
That's good. Anyway, you're interviewing me, not me interviewing you.
No, that is fine. I'm pleased that you've worn a tie. You're the first person to take this seriously. So
I'm taking it seriously. I'm here. I'm happy to talk about whatever you want. Thanks for having me on.
Ironically, we locked this in. We were going to chat all things. We are going to chat all things journalism. But then you've decided to break a whole lot of Melbourne-based news this week, which a lot of this podcast has been about the D's in the past.
Yep.
Wasn't necessarily going to be about that tonight, and I don't want to cause the Melbourne media manager too many headaches. I'm good friends with her.
Hello to Maddie and Caitlin.
So hopefully nothing too stressful for them. But I am interested in your side of the stories because, like, journalists, they cop a fair bit.
Yep.
Have
you noticed, have you?
You're not overly well liked, I think it's fair to say, which it's brutal seeing a lot of people don't actually know you, but people don't like to hear what journalists have to say. They don't always believe it, but you obviously report things based on what you believe is fact. So can you sort of give us a rundown on the week that's been for the Melbourne Footy Club?
It's been wild, isn't it? Well, I mean, I think I drove along the Toorak Road the other day and I went in my window and I said, "G'day, Benny." And he said, "G'day, Tom." And then I got a message from you, I think a couple of days later, saying, "Can you come on the podcast?" And then I'd been chasing this Petrarca story for a while. I mean, it was sort of widely known in the footy industry that Petrarca was unsettled, unhappy. People around him were unsettled and unhappy with what transpired after his horrific injuries against Collingwood. But, you know, equating that to a story is difficult because players are unsettled or frustrated all the time. You know, just because a player's a little bit annoyed or frustrated at the club, it doesn't automatically mean that it's a story. But what became apparent to me over the days that led up to Monday was that his frustrations were so significant and so piercing that that it was worth reporting. It was worth talking about. And I was really quite surprised to learn that if he could be traded, he would. You know, which is, I know it's a big statement to make, and it's a hypothetical which people need to get their heads around. But what it means is on Monday, and as of now, he wants to leave the club. And that's a bitter pill to swallow, I imagine, for Melbourne, given he's got 5 years remaining on a contract. And Max Gawn sort of said as much when he was interviewed by Channel 10 in the car park a couple of days ago. But it doesn't mean, just because a player wants to leave the club, doesn't mean it's unsalvageable. Tom Papley came back to the Swans, look at him now. You know, Joe Danaher ended up leaving Essendon, but he had another year at the Bombers as well. I think Ryan O'Keefe wanted to leave the Swans, ended up, I think, playing in a flag. Was he Norm Smith medalist?
Yeah,
so it doesn't mean it's the end of the world, but when your best player, or arguably your best player, probably is the best player, generational talent, you know, a Norm Smith medalist, a superstar, can play forward and midfield, decides, yep, I want to leave. That is, I think that's a story, you know, and people might not like it. What happens when you break these stories, and it was the same when I did the Damien Hart, same all the time, but any sort of story with any significance, is people automatically doubt you. Oh, he's just speaking to the boot stutter. Oh, he's not quite right there. Nah, this bloke talks shit. And that's okay. But, like, I think this week it was proven correct. You know, there was no denials from Melbourne. No denials from Gary Pert in his statement. And that's my job in the end. In the end, like, my loyalty is from a professional sense, is to my work and to report the truth. So if it's going to significantly adversely affect the mental health of a player, or it's it's so deeply personal, as you can imagine some stories would be, then you leave it alone. But in the end, this is about a player that's frankly pissed off with his club. So that's a footy story. And that's essentially how I reported it. I finally tuned the words to make it really clear that this is not a trade story. Like, this is not a story about Petrarca has asked for a trade or Melbourne is trading Petrarca. So the denials that Melbourne won't trade Petrarca, it's not denying the story, but it is true that he's been agitated for quite some time, and I still think it's got a bit more to play out. This is not to say that he's going to be traded or even ask for a trade, because if you ask for a trade, it doesn't happen, then you've got to go back with your tail between your legs at the club, and that's big on his management as well. But there's still a long time left, and the two parties have a long way to go to get back together and to be happy ahead of 2025.
So does it frustrate you when people jump on X now, we call it, and doubt you and basically say that there's nothing in it?
No, I don't think so. There's a general distrust for journalism, and that's not just me. That's other journalists. That's just the way it is, and I don't spend a lot of time thinking about it when I know the story's correct. I think the key for me is to make sure the story is 100% accurate, and then people can read it however they want. Yes, I'm a Melbourne supporter, but when I'm in my working environment, in the when I'm actually putting together a story, I'm no more a Melbourne supporter than I am a Port Adelaide supporter or a Sydney supporter. I put it completely out of my mind. And in fairness, since I've worked in the industry, I've become less and less of a Melbourne supporter. And I worked at St Kilda Footy Club for 3 years. So that made me sort of less of a Melbourne supporter as well. So I still support Melbourne, but I'm not, I'm certainly not as passionate as I once was. And I'm certainly not as driven by results as I once was. But no matter what I've learned about Twitter and social media, no matter what you do, there's going to be criticism. So I don't get too caught up in it.
People would probably say on the back of this story that a lot of players are frustrated. Petrarca's one might not be too different. Have you had any trouble thinking about that and whether there is more to it?
There's more to it because he wants to go. Yeah, that's the difference. As opposed to player being frustrated because he's not in the team, or player being frustrated because he's being played out of position. You have your best player that would leave tomorrow if he could. And the only thing that's stopping him right now from requesting a trade tomorrow is the fact that he's got 5 years left on a deal. So I think that's the discrepancy there.
So then, what's that mean for the rest of the club?
Oh well, I mean that's a good question. That's a question for the club, I think. And Melbourne's been a stable club across 21, largely across 21, 22, and 23. I know the D's haven't won a final since 21, but you win a flag for a reason, and you were there. Like, would have been an unbelievable experience over in Perth, and I've got no doubt it was key. There were people like Adam Uze and Angus Brayshaw were critical to that stability. Even-tempered people, pragmatic, really good at what they did, no longer there. So you just lose a little bit when you lose people like that. And I think Angus Brayshaw's career-ending concussion was hugely significant at the start of the year, even more significant than what I don't think anyone ever thought it would be. Partly for the way he played, but just for the way he is around the group, as you would have seen firsthand. His composure with the ball, his composure with teammates.
And just standards that he drives.
Yeah, the standards that he drives as well. And then Oliver's had his wretched off-season and has never really been a leader anyway. He's been a great player. Petrarca's out from midway through the year with a really horrific injury, with terrible internal damage. And Max Gawn is a fantastic player and a great leader, but he's banged up as well. So then you look elsewhere. Well, Steve May's also hurt his ribs. Jake Lever's had his injury troubles this year. Harrison Petty hasn't been the player that he was late last year. Christian Stalen's been injured this year. So they just lack stability. That's from a football perspective. And then you've got the rest of the stuff, which we all know about as well, behind the scenes with the former president, Glenn Bartlett, and all that sort of stuff, which must weigh on the leaders of the club. I don't know how that's all going to end up, but it's not ideal. You don't want to be distracted by that sort of stuff. So how Melbourne deals with this will make or break them.
Amongst all of this bad timing, probably the Alex Neil-Bullen request to go home, which I think the club handled well. And
Same.
Alex Neil-Bullen, you could say best bloke in the AFL. I don't know all the guys in the AFL, but there wouldn't be many more respected people in the competition than Alex Neil-Bullen in terms of a leader, a person, a player.
His character's fantastic. That's why Adelaide like him. He's a premiership player. I think Melbourne's done the right thing, giving him essentially 2 farewell games. Yeah. I don't think you are afforded that unless you're a premiership player. I think being a premiership player allows you to say to the club, look, family reasons, can I go? Yes, give him a good heads up. I'm really sorry. I need to do this. Melbourne's out of finals contention. You know, if he wasn't a premiership player, or if this was at a club that had never won a flag in this era, I think, how many games have Neil Bullen played? 150 odd?
Yeah, probably close there.
Yep. I think the club would say, what's the point in playing him now when we can get another game into a young kid and we don't want to injure him for trade reasons? But they're playing him because he's a premiership player and they want to send him off the right way. And I think that is the right call.
Yeah, and he's just earned the respect internally. He's been a tremendous person for that club.
Yeah.
But then you've also reported that North Melbourne were interested in Jack Viney, which adds to this whole thing. It doesn't mean that Viney wants to go. So that's... People can jump to conclusions. There was never a report that Viney even...
No, thank you for listening to my report. It's interesting. You got in any trade report, you've got three elements. Club wants player wants club, and the club that the player's at is open to it or not. So those are the three things. You've got the two clubs and the player. And in this case, I'm certain Melbourne want to keep Viney. I'm not... Viney hasn't completely shut down yet that he wants to stay. I think he probably will stay, but we haven't heard from him, and that's where that's at. And North Melbourne want Viney. So the story is about North Melbourne wanting Viney.
Yeah. And why wouldn't they?
Well, why wouldn't they? And, you know, if I was Viney, if they could offer him a long-term deal, it's nice being a one-club player, and he's fundamentally Melbourne. Yeah, but Sam Mitchell was fundamentally Hawthorn as well. You know, it's like Doug Hawkins was fundamentally the Western Bulldogs, went to Fitzroy for a year, and their legacies aren't tarnished by playing at another club. So I would, from a supporter's perspective, I would prefer Viney to stay. If I had to guess either way, I think Viney will stay. But if North Melbourne dangle a carrot, a long-term deal, more money, leadership, you know, he's entitled to have a look at it, I think.
And then the other element amongst all of this is Dan Houston, who had been reportedly interested in returning to Victoria. He's obviously signed on at Port Adelaide, and Melbourne was the club linked. Have you been across that story? Yeah,
so he's got 3 years remaining on a deal at Port Adelaide. He wants to return to Victoria because his girlfriend is Victorian. And I reported tonight, actually, Port are saying, no worries, we can talk about that, but find us a club that's going to offer us 2 first-rounders. And Melbourne was that club. Pick 6 this year on current ladder positions, and next year's future first-rounder, which Demons fans would hope would be, pick 14 to 18 or something, but, you know. And as of yesterday, Dan Houston, I don't know why, has called on Melbourne. There's conspiracy theories flying around why he has because of all the drama this week. I don't know why the reason is. But Porter's saying, that's fine. Find us another club that's going to offer 2 first-rounders. And at the moment, that's not Geelong. They don't have a first-rounder. That's not the Western Bulldogs. And that's not Collingwood. They're 3 Victorian clubs that don't have a first-rounder in 2024. So, and is Hawthorn going to give up 2 first-rounders for Dan Houston? Maybe not. So, from a Melbourne perspective, I think the D's would clearly prefer Dan Houston, and it would help that connection. But I don't think it's necessarily make or break if they miss out. I don't know what you think. So do you think he doesn't go to Melbourne at this stage? I think it's looking less likely than it did a week ago. Yeah, there's still a lot to play out, but he's certainly called on them. But he wants to come back to Victoria for family reasons. And he's got 3 years remaining on a deal. So I would have thought that Port should say, no worries, we'll do the best deal for you, but you'll go where we say because you need to get home to Victoria, just like Neil Bullen to Adelaide or Port. What are your thoughts on contracts? So these days, players can ask for a trade within contract. I guess the club is entitled to say no, and there's been a few cases, but generally the trade happens. I guess clubs can also kind of trade them if they're in contract, if the right move's made. Trelaw? Yeah. So do you think contracts are here to stay? Like people are signing long-term deals? Well, there was I had a good conversation with Jackson Payne, who worked at the Hawks, played at Collingwood and Brisbane. Yep, good fella. Captained the Olmo Burnians footy club in the VAFA. And he made a really good point because I said that exact thing to him. He said, we've got to reposition what an AFL contract is. It is a contract to play AFL. It's not a contract to play at this club. And I did the numbers last year. So from 2018 to 2023, I went back through every single player that got traded, and exactly 50% were traded in contract. Wow. So 1 in 2 players traded in contract, and half of those wanted to go, and the other half were pushed out by the club. So really, it marries up in a way that like it suits club and player across the board. But in isolated incidents, obviously it's one or the other. So Collingwood pushed Trelaw out. He didn't want to go. Collingwood pushed Jaden Stevenson out. He didn't want to go. Collingwood pushed Brodie Grundy out. Yep. He didn't want to go. Melbourne pushed Jack Watts out. He didn't want to go. They pushed Jesse Hogan out. He didn't want to go. So it does work both ways. But you're right. Dan Houston, Christian Petrarca, Tom Barras, there's heaps more, are good examples of where long-term contracts don't work for the player. Like, they would be better off signing shorter-term deals. And if they've got a year to go, the club probably goes, you know what, he's only got a year to go, let's trade them. 3 or 4 years to go, the club might just say, we're not even talking. So I think managers, they want security for their players, but they also want flexibility for their players. It's very hard to have both. The right hand working, your left hand working. And it's a difficult conundrum for clubs and managers to work through.
Last one on the Ds for now. Next year, right now, if you had to call it top 8, are they a final side?
I think Melbourne's a final side. I agree with what Gary Lyon was saying on SEN yesterday, I think. Like, for across 21, 22 and 23, and a sort of a reasonable portion of this year until more recently, Melbourne has had a crack almost every single week. So when Melbourne loses, it's because their connection's down or the ball movement's not quite there, but they have a crack. And that's, like, as a supporter, that's all you can ask from a club. But it has been frustrating, I'd imagine, for Melbourne fans who are far more into it than me. But even for me and my dad loves it. And he sits there watching going, every time we lose, it's because the connection between defence and mid and forward is down, offensively, with the ball. So I don't know how they're going to fix that, whether you can bring in a forward to do that, or it's just about having more skillful players up the field. But I think Melbourne should be a finals team. Melbourne need to maximise the era that Max Gawn is in. So you've got potentially the club's greatest ever player, one of the greatest ever ruckmen that's played AFL, could be a 7-time All-Australian in 3 weeks or 2 weeks. And you're not rebuilding now. You're trying to get one more while he can. And he's probably only, I don't know how many more years he's got in terms of his career, but at his best, he might only have 1 or 2 more years at his best. So go out and get and have another crack for a flag, I reckon, and cop the consequences down the track. They've got good young players anyway, so it's not like they've got a dearth of young talent. But Melbourne should be playing finals next year, I think. And they should be playing this year, I think, as well.
Yeah, and it's funny, if you look at the last 2 years, I think the level that they were playing at would probably have them flag favourites in this season right now. I think the competition's obviously so even.
It's so even, and
they've probably timed it a little bit off.
And they've been up for a while, the Ds, and there's just a sense that sometimes clubs have an off year just because it gets a bit stale. Like Clayton Oliver not being at his best has really hurt the Ds this year.
Yeah, and you take out Brayshaw, there's 2 of your top 5
and Melksham
players
missing the first half of the year, and I really rate Melksham as a player. I wrote last July, I think, for the Raw. I said, go and give Brodie Grundy's money to Tom Hawkins. Like, offer him whatever Brodie Grundy's on this year, $800,000, and say, Hawk, come for 1 year, because you're in it to win a flag. Or Jack Riewoldt. You needed someone.
Josh Kennedy.
Or someone, just someone they could it could be a key forward, because I think Van Rooyen will be that guy, but he's not quite there yet. But it also doesn't help that Melbourne's best ball winners, most of them aren't great kicks. Like, I think Viney's improved his kicking a lot, but he's not Zach Merritt. Petrarca and Clayton Oliver, unbelievable players, but they're not Zach Merritt the way they kick the ball. So that's an issue when the blokes who get the ball most aren't beautifully skilled. Great players, but that's not their number one.
Very good summary there. Let's go into a little bit of journalism, which is where initially we were going to start the podcast. If
that's more my strength.
If
yes.
you hadn't have taken over the week, I guess you break a story. What's it like for you sitting there waiting for the reactions? Are you nervous for validation? Are you 100% confident and you can relax because you know it's fact? How do you watch that unfold?
What do you mean the validations, like the social media validations, or other clubs or players? Or
well, I guess players and clubs have the ability to come out and not tell the truth, which is what you would do anyway.
Yeah,
but
there's a bit of that. But credit to Melbourne this week, they told the truth, which I respected. No, I don't get nervous before you do the story, you report it, you put it on social media, and then in many respects you move on. I don't read all the comments. I don't read what everyone's saying about a story. I get a gist sometimes, but if I got sucked into the X feedback, it would do my head in, because just like I don't understand things that I don't work in. People who've never worked in media, have got no idea about media, think that they understand footy media perfectly, and that's okay. That's a footy fan. Footy fans get passionate about their clubs, but if I got caught up in that feedback loop, I'd be in a lot of trouble. So no, I don't get nervous with the feedback. No.
I find a journalist role really important. I studied sports media. I was kind of
You're
considering.
slightly biased.
Well, yeah, I was kind of considering going down the journalism path, and then I didn't think I was cut out for it. So
You still could.
I respect how hard you've had to work to do it. So I'm probably slightly biased, but at the same time, I just think people crave information in this day and age. People love social media and they love Twitter because they get all these scoops.
Yeah.
But then they also hate them.
Yeah.
It kind of doesn't quite add up.
People are blinded by the clubs they support.
Yeah.
And I don't say that as a criticism at all. Like, people love their clubs, they're passionate about their clubs, and if you report a story in their club that they don't like, then it means you hate their club, when in fact it could be just an accurate story that's negative about their club. Like, I remember when I did this story about Damien Hardwick quitting last year, and I got like lots of feedback from Richmond fans saying I should have waited until the club announced it. I'm sort of shaking my head going, do you know what like journalism and media is? If we take that approach, it means, you know, the Essendon drug saga is entirely different because no one's reporting the truth. Everyone's just waiting till the club gives their propaganda. There's no Adelaide training camp because we're waiting for the Crows to say, no, everything's okay, nothing to see here. You know, there's no tanking scandal at Melbourne. There's no Carlton salary cap. You know, it's up to journalists to hold organisations and people to account within reason. Yeah. So clearly, political journalists are far more hard-nosed than sports journalists because, to be frank, like, you know, politics is more important for society than sport from a day-to-day pragmatic perspective. But sport is hugely important to people. And if people want information, it's up to journalists to go out and find it within reason.
That was my angle, because if it wasn't for journalists, I guess we probably know 10% of what's happening within the sporting industry, like realistically. And without journalists, we probably know 1% because, as you say, and I completely respect that. Like, why would an AFL coach want to release a whole lot of story about their club? They just wouldn't, and that's fine because
Absolutely
they
fine.
want the competitive advantage.
They've got a job, we've got a job.
Exactly. So, yeah, I just find it ironic that fans don't like journalists when they're actually pretty integral to.
I think people have journalists they like and they don't like as well, and I do.
Yeah,
I did before I became a journalist. Like, I remember thinking I really like that journo, but I'm not sure about that journo. And since I've worked in journalism, I've completely changed my mind on some people as well because you get to know them. And, it's hard for me because I haven't been in journalism long enough to truly appreciate what it was like when newspapers were the boss. Yeah. You know, when a back page story would, set the agenda for the week. Because I don't know about you, but my mates and people younger than me don't read the papers.
No.
I do because I like it and I enjoy it and I'm into journalism, and people don't watch the 6 p.m. news either. No. And I'm on the 6 p.m. news. But that's not a criticism. It's just people's viewing habits change.
Yeah. People watch your news via you sharing it on Twitter.
Exactly right. So a great example last week. Twitter was down for some reason, or 9 News Melbourne Twitter was down. So I did a story on whatever the story was, and I did it at 6:15 because it was I can't remember the story was. I did it at 6:15, and my phone didn't light up at all. So no one had seen it live in my world. And then they finally put it on Twitter at about 7 p.m. My phone lit up. And I'm thinking to myself, that just proves that people are watching it on their phones, on Instagram, on Twitter, on TikTok, whatever else, on the app. People aren't as much sitting home, turning on the TV and watching the news because, people's viewing habits change. And that's a hard thing to get your head around as a journalist. Because if I get a story at 3 p.m., do I hold it for 6:45 and risk losing it? Or do I just tweet it then and then say tune in to 9 News tonight to watch it? And that's a balance.
Where do your loyalties lie? Obviously, you're on Channel 9. You're also on SEN. You, I guess, journalists are themselves as well. As you say, you can share it yourself. How do you go about balancing that? It's
a really difficult balance. I mean, the best example I've got for you today is I did a story an hour ago on Kevin Sheedy stepping down from Essendon's board. So in that situation, I had the story. You call the club to confirm it, which they did. Your man there, Ryan Larkin, who's an excellent operator. I knew the way I found out that not many people would know. So if I'd had another list manager, for example, or someone from another club tell me, I think, geez, this is going to get out. Good relationship with the club. I've got the story because I had it first. The club still releases something shortly after to its members and its fans, and the story's out there. But not every story works like that. I got to a story in, when was it, March or February, that the AFL had given Taron Thomas an 18-week suspension for his variety of, misdemeanors, to put it lightly, bad errors. And this wasn't going to hold, I thought. I thought. So this is midday. I thought, I've got to do a tweet here. And in fairness, my bosses are happy with me doing a tweet because it drives people to watch the news that night, tune into 9 News that night. So I did a tweet and then it spoke about that night. So it varies what you do. And it's a balancing act every day. The Gubby Allen catching up with Taron Thomas last week. I don't know why I've done 2 Taron Thomas stories I'm talking about, but I was pretty sure that wouldn't get out. So I waited till the news. That led the news that night, which I thought was interesting because it was middle of the Olympics, but they were big on that story. So that led the news. So 6:01 p.m. I'm doing that story. And then by 6:45, Channel 7 have confirmed the story with St Kilda and whoever else, and they've got a story up. The Herald Sun's got a story up. The Age has got it up. So, my loyalty is to Channel 9, but they're really good. They understand that sometimes you need to tweet stories to get it out first and then point people to the right direction. There was a Collingwood fan who hugged a West Coast player over the Marvel Stadium fence earlier in the year, and I got the exclusive interview with him. We drove out all the way past Geelong to interview him, and instead of just leaving it and then going on the news that night, we had a sort of a 15-second grab of him talking. That became a social media clip. Tune in tonight to see the full interview. So there's different ways to plug. Does that answer make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense.
What I can't do is go on SEN first and break a story, a decent-sized story. And I actually had an incident with Kane Corns a couple of weeks ago. I don't know if you heard it. Yeah. Because I had a story on David Teague, who had mutually parted ways with Richmond. And David Teague, I had the story. I had to write it for the 9 website before I went on SEN because that's in my contract with 9. I can't do it on another platform. Yep. And they were happy with me doing that. But then I was just sitting there and Kane brought me in too early. I said, Kane, you've got to wait. And he couldn't understand why I'd waited, but I was waiting to get it online so I could talk about it on air. It was all fine, but, it's a tough balancing act sometimes to make sure that you're servicing your main employer, which to me is 9. And in fairness to SEN, they're happy with that. So that's okay as well.
How do you go with the competitiveness between other journalists? I've got no doubt you've probably got good relationships with them because
I like to think so.
You're at the same place at the same time. You go to games, everything like that.
Yeah.
But then you're also fighting each other.
Yeah,
daily. And
fighting strong. I mean, it's competitive. But I like to think I've got a really good relationship with him. I've got a huge respect for Mitch Cleary at Channel 7. I think he's a fantastic journo. Cal Toomey and Josh Gablich and Riley Beveridge at AFL.com do great jobs. I'm talking about the traditional news-breaking journos here. And then Caro's been amazing for me as well. Damien Barrett's always been really friendly. So I've got a huge respect for those other journos. And it's interesting. Like I don't mind when I miss a story if I'm nowhere near it.
Yep.
Mitch,
that was going to be my next question because you do have to miss stories.
Yeah, you miss stories all the time.
They're going to get them.
You can't chase everything.
Yeah.
Mitch got a story, really good story, well, in terms of the journalism side of things, about Tyson Stengel at a Geelong nightclub a couple of weeks ago. And I hadn't even heard of it. Like, I was nowhere near. I didn't know Tyson Stengel was at a nightclub. I didn't know he was in trouble. I didn't know. So, well played, Mitch. Like, that's absolutely fine. And I'd imagine you'd say the same back to me. What really gets me is when you just miss a story. Yeah. When you're chasing something and chasing it and chasing it and you just miss it. And that kills you because, like, you're so close to it. So that's when you have literally sleepless nights where you're like, oh, how could I have done this differently?
What's that process like? Do you just need that extra bit of validation from someone?
Yeah, that's probably normally it. You just need confirmation from someone else and you just miss it. And they're the ones that really hurt. So it's constantly balancing, being correct, which is number one, but sitting on a story is dangerous. And I don't like sitting on stories at all. So it's better to tweet it out. And then people can watch the news that night anyway. But sometimes you do get to sit on a story like Kevin Sheedy today and no one else was going to take that, so that's okay as well. Yeah. But no, it's a bit of, like, I don't know why my mind always goes to this one, and I've told it a few times, but I just missed the Jack Gunston story in trade period. The aim for the trade period for a journo, I think, is to put a new name on the table.
Yeah. That's
the key. So all the names are on the table and everyone's talking about player X, Y, and Z. And then if you can go, actually, I've got another player here. that's on the move or potentially that is like that's what you want in the
fans
trade
love
period. Yeah, fans love it. And Jack Gunston wasn't a new player in terms of his age or anything, but like no one knew that he wanted to go back to Hawthorn, and I had it. And what I was an absolute idiot. I can't tell you, Ben, because I was trying to confirm what Brisbane thought of this, and then what Hawthorn thought of this. I should have just gone with Jack Gunston is exploring a trade back to Hawthorn. The rest can play out.
Yeah, that's the story.
That's the story. But I tried to get more and more, and I missed it as a result. And I kicked myself over that, you know. And there's been a few examples this year as well where I've just missed it because I've just waited a little bit as well. But you can't jump too early because then you might be slightly wrong. And if you're slightly wrong, you're in trouble as well.
How often, do people actually get anything wrong in your mind?
Well, I'm not going to talk about others getting things wrong. People can make their own judgments. But I mean, I've got things wrong in the past for sure. Like there was a real learning curve for me as a journo. Just because someone tells you something that they are adamant is correct, it doesn't mean it's correct. Because their threshold is slightly wrong. Is slightly lower than a journo's threshold. I mean, we've seen in the past 3 weeks, and this is not a criticism of these guys, but 3 former players have tried to be journos and got things wrong. And people get things wrong all the time. But Campbell Brown was wrong about Dean Cox going to West Coast. Josh Jenkins, love him, was wrong about Charlie Curnow not playing last week. He played, then he got injured. And at the moment, David Schwartz is wrong about Dustin Martin going to Gold Coast Suns. So we'll just hold on that.
Yeah, that's an interesting one.
But just because someone is adamant that what they're telling you is right, and just because 2 people might tell you something that they are adamant is right, it doesn't mean it is. Because what we call the really dangerous thing is an information loop. If you have lots of people saying things to each other that are all the same, and they all believe it because they all tell each other, but no one knows the source of it. There was an example of this last year where an AFL player was rumoured to have taken his own life. And it just wasn't true. He hadn't. But everyone was talking about it, and everyone was talking to each other, and everyone assumed it was true. And I was getting messages and calls from everyone saying, take it to the bank. You know, this player's tried to take their own life. Not take it to the bank. That's disrespectful. But you know what I'm saying? Like, this is 100% correct. And it just wasn't. And that's a great example of the average punter, again, not a criticism, not having that journalistic threshold that reporters have to make sure things are right and to tick every single box.
I appreciate that you've got your phone on airplane mode
at
the moment. How much time do you spend on your phone?
My screen time's 8.5 hours a day. I mean, the hard thing is going home and switching off, like being with your family. You know, in our household with my wife, it's like there's an understanding that Monday night it's footy shows night.
Yep.
So I'm not on Classified. I'm watching Classified. I'm watching in any order. I'm watching Classified, 360, and Couch. That's just the way it is in footy season because you have to be across things for the week. But then Tuesday night, Wednesday night if I'm not on Classified, Thursday night if there's no footy, that's phone away. But what I do, I don't know if people are even interested in this, but what I do, I normally wear an iWatch. So the phone goes on the charger in the bedroom, and if I get a call from someone, it comes up through my watch, so I can go and take it if I need to. Otherwise, I'm not answering anything. Because otherwise, I'm just on my phone all day, and it cooks you. And it's hard. It's like, I've missed stories this year because I've been off my phone for 20 minutes. And then you're like, oh, if I was just on my phone. So, I don't know the solution to this, but your whole life is spent in your phone. If you want to be a successful reporter, I think your whole life has to be in your phone. And that's hard.
Does it have an expiry date for you? Do you think it'll exhaust you at some point?
You calling me a veteran? No, I'm not thinking about expiry dates because I'm very lucky to be back in the first place. So I'm only back full-time working this year. I've been working full-time now for 8 months. Obviously, as you know, I had a year completely off. I thought I'd never get back in the industry again. 2023, I was working 1 day a week. So I'm relishing it. Yeah, some of it's hard, but it's hard in a way that's satisfying as well. And it's rewarding. It must be like how real estate agents feel when they sell a house. You hunt something, you chase it, and you get it. And at the end of the day, you're like, yes. Yeah, and then at the end of the day, you go again. It's like an addiction as well. You know, like on Monday, I did the Petrarca story. And then I was thinking by Tuesday, I'm like, okay, what's next? You know, you get to enjoy it. You get to relax for a couple of hours. Then you're thinking, okay, how can I follow this up? So it is all encompassing. If you want to be any good, I think any job's like that. If you want to be good, it is all encompassing.
You touched on the break. Obviously, you've come out and apologised for your actions in 2022.
Yeah.
We've sort of heard your story behind that. Obviously, you don't sort of stand for what you said. I don't either. And
Yeah.
that's sort of got nothing to do with you being on the podcast now.
Yeah.
I'm interested in your comeback. So
Yeah.
I think a lot of people probably thought you would never be in this position.
Well, I
where-
thought that as well.
Yeah, where you're one of the main sports journalists in the country, really.
Yeah.
And you had sort of disappeared from the public eye for maybe 12 months or so.
Yep.
What did you get up to there, and how did you make it back? Because I know you got to work pretty hard to crack into the industry, and then obviously to re-crack in, it couldn't have been easy.
Yeah, I thought I was done. Like, even, honestly, what is it, August now? When's this podcast going out?
Hopefully in a few hours.
Yeah, okay. Well, yeah, perfect. Well,
I've got a
timely.
basketball game at 9:30.
Oh, do you? Okay.
After that, we'll punch it out.
So it's August now. This time last year, I thought I was done as well. Like, I was working 1 day a week at SEN, which was fantastic, but there was no prospects of a full-time job. There was no prospects of any sort of career progression. And that was a really difficult place to be, but I only had myself to blame. And I've reflected on it a lot, and it was deeply embarrassing for me and the people around me, not what I did, but who I was. And I've said this before, it wasn't just an isolated incident. Like, clearly that sort of disrespectful talk was something that permeated in social situations that I was in for a long time. And reflecting upon that and understanding that took a lot of time. But in 2022, when I got sacked, I couldn't even walk down the street. And this is not me whinging, this is just a fact. I had to cop it. But I couldn't even walk down the street without people either ridiculing me or praising me. And that was like the divided nature of our society. You know, like, people would either say, you're a complete fuckwit, or you're a legend, Tommy, don't worry about the haters. And I disagreed with the latter. Like, as I've said it before, like, I completely deserve to get sacked. I've got no hard feelings toward Fox. But equally, I don't think that people should be judged overall without being given a second chance. I'm not all for third and fourth, fifth chances. I understand for the rest of my life, I'm on my last chance. But I honestly believe that I've learned a lot from what happened. And there's a lot of cliche words that get thrown around, being on a journey, that sort of stuff. Doing work and studying and making sure that you're a better person and the best version of yourself and all that sort of, in many ways, bullshit. Mm-hmm. But I had to do a lot of that. I've had amazing support from people. So in 2022, I went away. My then girlfriend, now wife, was an amazing support. So I lived in London. We went to sport. I saw family because my mum's side of the family is English. And then came back and really had no career prospects whatsoever. And that was really tough. And then mum was really unwell as well, which I've spoken about before. So she had brain cancer. So I looked after her. And that was a blessing in disguise, because I wouldn't have been able to look after her in her final few months had it not been for being sacked. So clearly, net negative, like terrible being sacked, being publicly humiliated from people looking at you in a different way, people judging you, people hating you. Terrible. But the silver lining was that I was able to look after mum every day in early 2023 in her final few months, which I thought was really, that was really significant and something that I wouldn't have had the opportunity had I not lost my job. So I made the most of that. And then by this time last year, sort of September last year, Channel 9 offered me a job. And I just jumped at it. I couldn't believe it. Honestly, couldn't believe it. Like, I was like, I hand on heart, I thought I was done.
Did you have backup plans? Did you?
No.
You didn't know what was potentially next? You weren't going to be a real estate agent?
Nah, beyond a few thoughts. I mean, I'd had a discussion with a real estate agent mate. Dad's a teacher. My two sisters are teachers. My sister-in-law's a teacher. There's a lot of teaching in our family, although they're all primary school teachers. Dad's a secondary school teacher. But I don't think I'd be a great teacher. I think I would like to be a teacher for a bit. Then I think I'd get bored of it. I respect teachers hugely. I've coached a lot of cricket, but I didn't really have any backup plans. No, which was hard to come to terms with.
So what was the step into SEN? How did you push that door down? I know, like, I interned there when I was younger. I interned at Herald Sun, Fox Footy. Like, I feel like you were probably back at the stage of where I was at uni. Like,
confronting to be back there when you're 30 years old.
Yeah, and you're trying to, I guess, make your name for yourself and put some runs on the board.
Yeah, Oh, it's really good. No one's ever asked me about this. I caught up with Jared Waitley, hope he doesn't mind me saying, in December 2022. I think he just wanted to see where I was at, and he's been a great support. Extremely critical of what I said and what I did, but willing to support, which I appreciated. What's that Ross Lyon thing? Challenge the behaviour, support the person. Hutch is all for second chances, and he's proven that with a number of different people, but also me. So his idea was that I do Sunday crunch time with Sarah Ollie, who's a close friend of mine. I'd worked with at Fox, known for a number of years. We actually started in the same week at Fox, so we'd known each other for a long time. Do that with her and Scott Lucas, whoever else they wanted on Sunday crunch time. It's a nice, easy in because there's lots of games to talk about. Sundays morning's pretty cruisy, a chance to sort of be relaxed, talk about MRO stuff, injury stuff, plus any news I have. And what it evolved into was, okay, I was working Sundays, and then that'd get me to do Monday mornings with Kane and Bucks, which was awesome. And I didn't get paid any more for that, but that was fine. I was happy to just do it. And then I just, I'd be looking after Mum on a Wednesday, and I'd get a story on a Wednesday. So I'd just write the story, and I'd send it in. The SEN website would put it up. I'd go on radio to talk about it. I needed to make sure, I had no great plan, but I needed to make sure that people, to a degree, got used to my voice and got used to my writing again, which was difficult because SCN got a lot of criticism, Hutchie got a lot of criticism, Sarah probably got a lot of criticism as well for working with me. So they all took a punt on me. And I just wanted to pay them back by working hard and by being the best person that I could be. And I think I did that, but it was, there was still a lot of teething problems. I did a podcast with Caro and Corey, the Don't Shoot the Messenger podcast, and the amount of emails poor Jane, the producer, got for that. So a lot of people stuck their neck out for me. And that's why I think when you ask me the question, what's the end goal or where am I going to be? I think I'm just like, you know what? So many people, too many to name, privately and in a work environment, have looked after me. I don't want to disappoint any of them. I've got so much gratitude for being able to be back in the industry. And then, the opportunity to be on SCN. I use the Hardwick story as the best example because that was a Monday night. I wasn't working. Bridget, my wife, was in Perth for work, and I'd only chased her for about 4 or 5 hours and got the story. And I've chased stories for months before. The Petrarca one I was working on for weeks. I've chased stories for months and not got them, and I got that story within a few hours. And for whatever reason, that story put me back on the map. People thought, oh, okay, he can work again. When really, it was what I was doing behind the scenes that I thought was putting me in the best position to be, the best citizen, the best co-worker, the best friend, the best colleague I could be. Not just one story, but I won an award for that story, which again made people think, oh, okay, yep, no, he's a good journo. When in fact, my journalism, I don't think it changed. What had changed was who I am. And I think you ask anyone around me, my friends, my family, I know they say now that I'm a far more balanced, respectful person than what I was beforehand, which is confronting because it means I wasn't then, but it's enlightening and rewarding because I feel like I'm doing the right things now to just be the best colleague and friend and husband I can be.
No, I think it's a great comeback story. On a different note, you mentioned cricket.
Can I say one thing?
Sure.
It's interesting. A lot of people have redemption arcs and comeback stories, and they have an end goal. I have no end goal. I was happy to be working at SCN a day a week. I was happy to write an article for SCN. I was happy to do trade radio with Sammy Edmund, who I absolutely loved. He's a fantastic journo. And I'm happy to be working at Channel 9. So people set goals, and I respect that. But I have no goals. I'm just one foot in front of the other, do the best job I can every day, and I'm just hoping things work out. That's probably the best way to describe it.
Love it.
Cricket.
Cricket.
You love cricket.
I do love cricket. You love cricket too.
I love cricket more than footy.
Big.
Significantly more than footy.
Do you want to work in it, or is it just
Yeah, both.
happy with passion?
Yeah.
Both.
I'm doing cricket this summer for more cricket this summer for SEN, and I did a lot of cricket at Fox.
Yeah.
Footy to me is don't get me wrong, I love footy, but when I got sacked in 2022, I didn't watch a lot of footy when I was overseas, but I watched all the shows. I'd wake up and I'd watch 360 or Classified on Clips or whatever it was, and and I'd listen to podcasts about this. So I love the media, the stories around footy. I love the journalism of footy, the stories, the narratives. And yes, I love the game, but I love cricket. Like I'll watch any cricket, as you probably do as well.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. You've made a 200 that was quite famous.
Thanks for bringing that up. I mean,
You've got to hear the story.
Oh, do you want to hear the story?
Yeah, got it.
I'm happy to tell it. How long have we got? Well, I was playing for South Caulfield last summer with two of my best mates, Will Russell and Louis Mildenhall, who I played a lot of cricket with at St Kilda. And, and they just asked, and I was opening the batting, and to be honest, the weekend before I'd been hit in the head batting, and I wasn't concussed, but have you played stick cricket?
Yeah.
Yeah. So in stick cricket, you get hit in the head, and they've actually changed this. Actually, this is not a word of a lie since Phil Hughes died, but back in the day, you'd play stick cricket,
Fall on the stumps.
and I got hit in the head, and I fell on the stumps the week before. Hugely embarrassing. I'm like, have I lost my eye here? Like, this ball's not that quick, but this ball just ricocheted up or reared up and got me like in the front of the head, and then just my bat and everything, stumps everywhere, and no one even celebrated. It was just hugely embarrassing for a duck. The week before, the Sunday before. So I walked out to bat, and I didn't train at all that week. I just needed to get away from cricket. So then I walked out to bat on that Saturday. It was a beautiful day with my partner, Brad Erasmus, who's a gun batter. Like, he played a bit of county second 11 cricket. Really good player. And he always faced first ball. And I was feeling rubbish in the warm-up. Like, it was a nice day, but I thought, I've lost it here. I don't know what's going on. Do I need to use contact lenses? Because I wear contact lenses to bat. And Brad, second ball of the day, there's lollipops an edge to second slip. You know those edges that, like, they balloon? Yeah. They're on its way down by the time it gets to the cordon.
Floating to the hand.
Floating. And the poor fella who had his Bucks party the day before, dropped it. I don't know if he's the captain, but he's an experience. And it was honestly, it was an absolute lollipop. And I said to Brad, Brad, like, you got to make the most of it. So anyway, next ball, cover drive for 4. I thought, okay, here we go. And we just batted. And there was a bloke, I'll say where, I don't care. I'll say where he was fielding a backward point, and he's just lipping me. I'm
guessing you cop a bit of that playing cricket.
I do cop a bit. I do cop a bit of it, but not as much as I thought I would either. Which is fine. Like, I actually bat better when they're at me, because it made me focus. Yeah. This is proof of that, because he kept lipping me. Not anything terrible, but just kept at me. I thought to myself, anyway, I got a ball, and it was back of a length, and I sort of jammed it down into the ground, and it went through his legs for 4 at backward point. I hit it quite well, but it went straight to him, but through his legs. And I just looked at him, and I marked centre, and I thought, I just want to bat all day today. I sound like a wanker. I sound like I'm a test cricketer.
Michael Clark over here.
This is backyard cricket, but I looked at him, I thought, I want to bat all day to shut this bloke up. And I got to, we got to 100, and we got to 150, and it got to the point of the day where they were cooked, but the ball started reverse swinging, and we were both on about 170. Sounds ridiculous to say that. We were both on about 170. Ball started reverse swinging, and I thought, do I really want this? It's hard now. It gets harder to bat. I'm tired. It's hot. I've gone through about 5 pairs of gloves again, like Michael Clark, and then my mate who I think he hit 14 sixes or something. I hit 20 fours and 3 sixes. I think he hit 14 sixes and 8 fours or something ridiculous. Hit the ball over the fence, lost ball. Unbelievable result, because then the new ball doesn't reverse. So then we start seeing it like a beach ball again. But I got to about 190, and I've never been more nervous in my life, because in that situation, I know that I'll never be back there again. You get to 90, you think, okay, well, if I get out now, it's an ideal. Hopefully I can get 109. I'm never going to make that again. So I tightened up. It was 3 overs left in the day, and I really tightened up. Anyway, we got there in the end, and I got 203 not out. And at the end of the day, we were naught for 428. And my phone blew up, and I just lapped it up, because I'm not a superstar cricketer. Like, I've played a bit of first 11 cricket at St Kilda a few years ago, but I'm a second 11 district cricketer. But I fed off Brad because he batted so well, and I just knocked singles around. And in fairness, half their team was hungover from the day before from the blokes' Bucks. So it was an amazing day, and I just lapped it up. You got a choice in that situation. You can either be really modest and say, it was good to get some runs, or you just lap it up. And we just lapped it up, because I'll never get another double ton again. Maybe. I know what I am. I'm 30. I was 32 at the time, and it was just it was a magical day.
That is fantastic.
So thank you for asking the question.
Great opportunity to tell it. And so, cricket, are there any dreams in terms of work-wise? Like, I guess, holistically in your career, but cricket, Ashes.
I'd love to work on an Ashes series overseas. I'd love to go to India. I mean, it's hard because, Fox, there's a lot of things that disappointed me about losing my job at Fox. One of them, not at the top of the list, but one of them was that Fox has the footy and cricket rights. And Nine, amazing company, doesn't have the home cricket rights and doesn't have the footy rights. And neither does 10, to be fair. I don't know if I was at Channel 10. So, I just started commentating a lot of cricket. I'd started doing some BBL games. I was told that whatever state cricket I wanted to do and women's cricket I wanted to do, just let them know and I'll do those games. So they were developing me along that. I did one of my career highlights, which people scoff at, but just shows you how much I love cricket, and I imagine you agree, is commentating the Shield final, New South Wales versus Victoria in 2018-19, I think it was. Marcus Harris made 150. James Pattinson took wickets. And at the Junction Oval, it was just awesome, and I loved it. Most people would think it would be on. My career highlight would be being on the couch or, I don't know, breaking a story. It's like, no. It's calling the Shield final with Ian Healy and Darren Lehman and Mel Jones.
Elite.
That was awesome. Elite. So I really missed that. So calling cricket, I'd love to do more for SEN. I don't think I want to call footy, but I'd love to get back into calling cricket if they'll have me. But just being around cricket is enough for me. I think it's important, I say this to people all the time, if you're going to be a journo, as in a traditional journo, I'm talking TV news or newspaper, you've got to be one or two of the following. You've either got to call sport or break stories. And if you're neither, then you're sort of replaceable. So Gerard Whateley, superstar, because he calls footy and he used to break stories. Like Anthony Hudson doesn't break stories but calls footy. So I don't think I want to call footy, but I'll try to break stories. But if I can also call cricket, host some things, break some stories, I think I've got a good sort of balance. And I really respect footy callers. I think they do an unbelievable job. And speaking of people who I disliked, like footy commentators cop it, but I think a lot of that is unfair. I think they do a tough gig and they do a great job. Like honestly a great job, because BT might not appeal to you, but he appeals to lots of others. So, James Brayshaw I think does an amazing job. If you listen to James Brayshaw on Triple M, completely different to Channel 7, but that takes an amazing skill set to be able to do both. And all I want, if I'm going off on a tangent here, but all I want from experts, cricket and footy, is to give us their opinion. So if they give us their expert opinion and I disagree with it, that's okay, because they're actually doing their job, they're doing their work, they're giving an opinion, that they're leading the conversation. Kane Cornes is the best example of that. I disagree with probably 25% of what Kane says, but he's brave enough to give his opinion. He doesn't do it for clicks. He does it because he honestly believes it, to a point where you actually can't talk him around, even if he's objectively wrong.
He's also got the knowledge to back it up.
Well, he does a lot of work.
He watches more than anyone else. So.
He watches so much footy. And I know he watches a lot of footy because we talk about it, but he watches a lot of footy. Close checking on Footy Classified is fantastic because it shows how much footy he watches. But the experts or the former players across any sport that don't give their opinion drives me insane. Like, that's what they're being paid for. They're experts in their field. Give us your opinion. And luckily at Nine and Fox, we've got amazing experts that give their opinion. Cricketers are sometimes a little bit less inclined to, because it's a smaller field, but I still like to know what people are thinking about the game. I think that's what creates good content.
You talk about the Sheffield Shield being a career highlight.
Yeah.
The job takes...
That's a weird sentence, isn't it?
No, not for me.
Yeah, you love it.
The job takes you in like some amazing places and gives you amazing opportunities. What are some of the highlights or things that you sit back and think, gee, that was cool? Or like as a sports fan, obviously growing up and getting to be part of it.
I think just little things like being part of the grand final coverage for the AFL was awesome. I think Fox does it. Well, they certainly did a 3 or 4 hour pre-game. So I was a big part of that. When I was up in Brisbane for the Hub, that was probably the career highlight, actually. COVID was terrible, but for me professionally, it was really good. Because what happened at Fox was anyone that was on contract, like I was, got more opportunities, because anyone that was being paid per appearance got stood down or didn't get used because the company was trying to save money. So all of a sudden, they said to people like me and Kath Lotton, here we go, like, there's all these opportunities, take them. So they sent me to Brisbane. They sent Kath back home to Perth the next year. When they sent us to the Gold Coast, I was in the hub for 2 weeks, in the transition hub. And in this hub, there was AFL players and list managers and assistant coaches, AFL executives. So you can imagine for a journo, the number one thing that you want is to be around people that you're going to get stories from and you can develop close relationships with. And every night at 5 o'clock, there was a game of soccer. It was the old guys versus the young guys. So the old guys were Andrew Dillon, Gillan McLaughlin, Eddie Maguire. These guys, Andrew Bassett, the St Kilda president. There was a few others versus the young guys. And I was part of the young guys team. I'll probably be in the old guys team now. But the young guys, people like Eddie Maguire's son. Joe Maguire was there. Eddie Betts' kids. There was so many other people that you'd play with. James Sutherland's son, Tom Sutherland, is a good golfer, his brother of Will and Annabelle Sutherland. So you develop these networks and these contacts with people. And I've always said the best way to develop a proper relationship with someone, or the shortest way, is via sport. Like whatever sport it is. You play golf with someone, you play cricket with someone, you got a full day. That is when you develop proper relationships. So for me, playing soccer with these people was awesome. And it makes it destigmatizes the journalist in you, which I really appreciated. So that was probably the career highlight, Queensland 2020. Whilst Victoria was hemorrhaging with COVID and it was terrible, professionally I was really lucky to get that opportunity.
Last one before we wrap things up. You've been very good with your time.
That's
and
right.
A young
you got a game of basketball.
I do have a game of basketball. I've got a bit of time, but it is probably the tightest AFL season we've seen in a very long time. We're a couple of weeks out from finals, but I want to know your predictions. Where does the season...
When did you say this podcast is going out?
Tomorrow morning.
Okay, so it's going to age badly no matter what.
Yeah.
That's okay. Well, this season I've predicted Port, I've predicted Sydney, I've predicted Collingwood.
I was big on Carlton all the way through.
Yeah, I'm big on Carlton. I just worry... I'm not the only one
Worry
to
that they're
say this.
sitting outside the 8.
Yeah, they might not make it. They should still make it. Well,
West Coast on the road with a few outs is a tough game.
Yeah, it is. I mean, I still think they should be beating West Coast, but West Coast can find something at home randomly, can't they? Against Freo this year, they found it a couple of times. Against the D's. How's the D's? That game and in Alice Springs were two of the D's worst losses, I reckon. Yeah. Long answer short, I think the Brisbane Lions are the best place to win it. I'm not exactly going out on a limb, but I think the experience of losing last year, the potential for a home Gabba prelim if they win their qualifying final, and just the fact that they're by and large injury free and they play an attacking brand. I think Lachie Neale, I know he's a 2-time Brownlow medalist, doesn't get the plaudits that he deserves.
Will he be 3-time?
I don't think so, but
who gets it?
I hope the Bont.
Yep.
I really hope Bontempelli
deserves
gets it.
One.
Yeah, you want your superstars. I got criticised a while ago for this, but I want superstars to win a Brownlow and a premiership to sort of frank their legacy.
Yeah.
Like it disappoints me that Nick Rewalt and Matthew Pavlich and Brad Johnson, maybe I'm a bit biased towards Jono because I love him, didn't win a flag. That disappoints me, and it's not even their fault. They did everything they could, and it, I think it would have been nice if a Pendlebury, maybe a Selwood won a Brownlow, for example, but. I would love Bont to win a flag, but I'd love him to win a Brownlow. I think
he's got a flag.
He could have easily won a couple of years ago. When did Neil? Was it 2021 when I thought Bont would win? Whatever. I think Bont is the most.
Well, the year Wines, 2021 Wines won it. I think Clary and Bont both were.
That's right.
Mid-30s, or 33.
If you're going to line every player up on a wall, the whole at recess in the AFL, and you ask me to pick a player for one game, it's Bont. I'm picking Bont number 1 ahead of anyone else. So I hope Bont wins the Brownlow. Isaac Heaney will go out real quick. I know he's ineligible, but I think he'll be a long way ahead.
Does he stop polling just because he's
maybe
rubbed out?
Probably for the best.
Yeah.
And that's another whole topic. I don't like that rule at all. But I hope Bont wins it. Who do you think is going to win it?
I think Zach Merritt will be close.
Yeah.
As a roughie, I just can't see him not polling 3 votes in most of Essendon's wins.
That's true.
He wins the most of the footy and he uses the footy so well.
Yeah, I agree.
They have fallen away a little bit. Potentially, he doesn't quite get there, but
he'll be right up there. He'll win a bit. He should be all Australian. He should be best and fairest.
Yeah, he polled well a few years ago when Parrish also polled really well, and Parrish has missed a lot of footy this year.
Yeah, who will be Essendon's second vote winner in the Brownlow? Nick Martin. Jai Caldwell, maybe. Yeah.
Just signed a deal.
Martin had 45 one day. He'll probably get a couple that day. Yeah, Jake Stringer will get a couple. I don't know. Yeah. I really rate Zach Merritt, and a bit what I was saying before. Like Zach Merritt could win 4 or 5, 6 best and fairest, 4 or 5 All Australian Guernseys, but he needs to play in winning finals. And it's not like basketball when you're 1 on 5 on the court and one individual can.
Exactly.
You're one of 18.
Yeah.
So
You don't carry the weight.
Dusty's the only player that I remember that actually carried his team across the line consistently in big games. And that's not a criticism of anyone else. It's just Dusty had this special skill in big games. Zach can only do so much. You know, like he's doing his absolute best at the moment. Essendon are losing, so he needs others to come with him. And it is, and they spoke about it in 360 last night. It is disappointing when a player like Dawson Heppel finishes their career without winning a final. Yeah. Like it's unlucky. Like he's done everything he could, 250 odd games. Zach Merritt's also never won a final. He's 28 to 29, and the runway gets pretty short, doesn't it? The runway, you start thinking, like, what am I doing? You know, can I get there? So I want to see the best players at least go deep in September. Like I would love to see Cripps on Grand Final day. Yeah. Just like I loved watching Josh Kennedy from Sydney on Grand Final day. Those sort of players on the bigger stage is what you love to see. And then there's players that are, I mean this with respect, like good ordinary AFL players who win 2 or 3 flags. So a lot of it is about luck. But Cripps to win a flag, Bont to win a Brownlow and a flag, Merritt to win some finals, you know, that would be good. But in reality, there's only so much they can do.
100%. Tommy, really appreciate your time, your insight. You've got plenty of stories. You've broken plenty of stories. It's been great to chat.
No worries. Thanks, Benny.